Welcome to Chevalier's Books. I'm Patty Lombard, and I'm one of the co-owners on behalf of my other partner, Bert Deixler. And welcome to the oldest independent bookstore in Los Angeles, as it says right there on the wall. And we are the oldest business on Larchmont, which we started in 1940 by Joe Chevalier, who started as a lending library. And that's pretty cool. So we're very excited to be here, and we are super excited to welcome Barbara and Paul. And I am particularly pleased because this came together kind of at the last minute. So thank you all for being so responsive. And I started to read the book, and I realized, oh my gosh, I have a sister who's exactly 5 years older than me, and I'm really deeply attached to her, so I need to call her more often and appreciate her. And it was really wonderful, and I love the book, and I think we're really excited to talk to Barbara and Paul. So without any further ado, I will tell you that we do have lots of books at the front, and then Barbara will come over here and sign at the end, but we're going to have a conversation and we'll do some Q&A, and we do have a bathroom in the back if you need it. Okay? Thank you, Paul.
Kierkegaard wrote the following: "Above all, do not lose your desire to walk. Every day I walk myself into a state of well-being and walk away from every illness. I have walked myself into my best thoughts, and I know no thought so burdensome that one cannot walk away from it. If one just keeps walking, everything will be all right." I asked Barbara what influences she might have had when writing Wild Things, and she mentioned one book, and one book alone, and it's called We're Going on a Bear Hunt. And I'll read a passage from it. "Swishy, swashy, swishy, swashy. We're going on a bear hunt. We're going to catch a big one. What a beautiful day. We're not scared. Oh, a river, a deep, cold river. We can't go over it. We can't go under it. Oh, no, we've got to go through it." Now, this reminded me of a wonderful line of Robert Frost, who said that the best way out is always the way through. So, Barbara, how does this Kafka line resonate with you, this Kierkegaard line resonate with you? And thank you. This resonate with you, and perhaps before you even talk about this Kierkegaard quotation, you might set up the evening by telling the story of Wild Things, how you came about it, and perhaps then read the first letter.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you so much, all of you, for being here. It's quite extraordinary to see all these faces. Somebody asked me just now whether I was nervous, and I was saying it feels different to be doing this event as opposed to the event we did last week in New York, because though the bookstore was filled with dear old friends, the bookstore now is filled with friends who actually saw me during the events of this book and watched me deal with all of it. So it feels even more emotional to be here now. And so this book, Wild Things, came about because at the end, just before the pandemic, my sister, who was my dearest friend in the world, was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And I raced over to be with her, and then I went back again at the beginning of 2020, and then I sat with her oncologist, and we talked about this coronavirus, and did we think it was going to have any sort of impact on anything. And I flew back to Los Angeles, and the whole world shut down. And she went into chemo, and I was unable to visit. So I started to walk in the park. I mean, I was walking in the park anyway, but I would take her with me on FaceTime. Bartleby, my dog, and I would follow this trail, and I would show her everything I was seeing. And we did this for months and months when she was feeling terrible from the effects of the chemo and everything. And then a lot of things were happening in my life at that time. Our oldest son, Sam, was descending down his own dark path. And so by towards the end of 2020, I knew I needed to get over to London somehow. And I went over in December with my younger son, Oliver, leaving Paul here to be with Sam, who at that point was in rehab. So Oliver and I arrived in London, were unable to see my sister because of more COVID laws, COVID restrictions. Finally, she was allowed to come home for Christmas. We had gone over there thinking with great hopes that we were going to find some magic cure. And we were with her for the last 3 weeks of her life, though she actually did not die while we were there. And she said, "I don't want to die in front of you and Oliver." And I said, I wish you would reconsider that. But she died as we boarded the plane back to Los Angeles. So she had the last word there. But we arrived back the next morning. I got Bartleby and we started out on the trail, and I was talking to her. And I've continued this trail for the last 4 years. I've been talking to her non-stop, and I realized pretty soon that I wanted to write something about it. But before that, I started one day, a couple of weeks into it, I picked up some rocks and started to make these little shrines to her. And at a certain point, there were about 72 shrines, and they were heart-shaped rocks, there were shells, there were whatever I found that I thought, and I would bring them from the beach, and I would find them in the park, and I would bring them. I mean, there are rocks from all over the world in Griffith Park now, and it gave me great comfort. And one morning, and I noticed there was one spot on the trail where I had placed seashells, and I noticed they kept disappearing. And I thought, is there some squirrel that's out there building an incredible home? And I would bring more and more shells. And then one morning, the shells were gone again, and there was a piece of paper with a note saying thank you. And this is very special to me because the person who left that note, who I then exchanged notes and gifts with for a full year, is here tonight. So I just want to read something that should have been printed in the book and for whatever reason wasn't. And thank you to Jay for your magic, your intuition, and your investment in our exchange. You literally transformed my life during my mourning period. And as you have said to me, we will have one another forever. So that it's very emotional to me to know that she is here and that all of you are here. So I think I should read something now. The book is a collection of letters. My sister was 59 when she died. I just turned 60, so I have now outlived her. Each letter, as you will discover, is focused on a particular plant or animal I found in the park. So this is the very first letter, and it's called Sacred Datura. Dearest sister, the plant on the side of the path, known as Sacred Datura, but often referred to as Jimson weed, has those beautiful white pinwheel blooms that Georgia O'Keeffe painted so many times. If you were standing here right now, you too would be transported back to our idyllic week in Santa Fe all those years ago. They close during the heat of the day and open in the evenings. The whole plant, blooms and fruits, is toxic, and it was used by the Chumash and the Zuni people for medicinal and magical purposes. The effects of ingesting it can be hallucinatory, though it seems that there is a fine line between tripping and poisoning. I have been walking a fine line for some time now since you departed. I have written letters, I have written poems, I have written prose, I have painted pictures, I have painted walls, I have saved time and I have wasted time. I have watched it rush past and I have seen it inch along, but through all of it I have walked. I have walked towards my grief, I have walked away from it, I have walked over it and under it, and sometimes I have even walked through it. My wandering has guided my wondering. Placing one foot in front of the other every single morning has led me to a new place that I could not have imagined existed before you left. And a lot has happened since you've been gone. O grew very sick, and for the longest time I believed it was all the grief stored up inside him. I may not be wrong about that, but he was also diagnosed with a chronic condition for which he will need infusions for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, your other beloved nephew, S., whom we thought to be on the road to recovery, has taken another wrong turn, but I maintain hope that he will find his way. When the pandemic prevented me from being by your side during your chemo treatments, I would bring you along on my daily hike via FaceTime. Now, this trail has become my daily infusion. I have created shrines in your honor, gathered specific heart-shaped rocks from everywhere to celebrate the memory of you. I have brought treasures from the beach, seashells and pebbles. I have arranged them all with my love and my longing for you. Your death brought you into my life in a new way. I miss you, I miss your presence, I miss your hand in mine, I miss your voice, your laughter, and I miss being able to check my memories with you. And yet you are also always with me. People do not pass away, they die and then they stay. That is a poem by Naomi Shihab Nye. When I was at your side during those last days, P sent me this poem, which I now have tattooed on my wrist. It seems your death inspired a whole series of tattoos up and down my arms, which are now more often exposed because the days are warming. I often wonder what you would say about them. And so it is the trees and the plants, the animals and the flowers who guide me now in your absence. You speak through them.
Do you want to perhaps say something more about the poem, the Naomi Shihab Nye poem, and how it resonated with you, and the fact that there it is. And you might tell the story of the tattoo, but also just what that.
I mean, certainly when Paul sent me this, she was still alive, but it spoke so powerfully to me, and has done even more in the years since she's been gone, because she isn't gone. I hate that expression, to pass away. And I notice people say pass away, or sometimes they just say pass, which I guess is a little better. But she isn't gone at all. And if you read this book, you will understand how much she is with me all the time. And I was on a walk this afternoon, not in the park, actually, on the hillside near where we live, and I was walking with my dog, of course, and I was just thinking very intensely about my sister, and I looked up and there was a hedge of passion fruit flowers and the passion fruits, and those flowers were her favorite flowers, and there is in fact a letter in there that's centered around those flowers, which you can also find in Griffith Park. So I feel it very much so. I don't know if you mean me to tell the story of the tattoo.
I want to read one other passage on walking from you so you can hear your own words. The physical act of walking has reattached me to myself. It has reattached me to this city which permits such wildness and such urbanization to coexist. There is no word for a bereaved sister, just as there is no word for a parent who has lost a child. There are widowers, widows, and orphans, but that is the extent of the lexicon for dead relatives. Sometimes we are known as the forgotten mourners, and in this new space I inhabit, walking has literally been my salve and my solution. Solvitur ambulando. It is solved by walking, is often attributed to St. Augustine in a refutation of Zeno's paradox of motion. But I have my own personal evidence. Walking has saved my life. It saves me every day from darkness, from pain, from nostalgia, from homesickness, from loneliness, from heartache. There is no ailment for which walking has not been a cure. I've chosen to walk a similar trail every single day. Sometimes I wonder if I could vary it, try different parks, different routes, and occasionally I do. But I always return to your trail because this is where I feel your presence. Barbara's wondering, what should I say? I wrote this. There is a line in the book that you know I love, where you say, things are not what they seem, but neither are they not. Can you comment on that and give some examples? And I think the examples you give in the book are very often examples of plants and flowers that carry a name, but really are very different from their appearance.
One thing, we haven't prepared this conversation so minute precisely, but we were having a conversation the other day, and Paul pointed out to me how much I use the word poison in the book, which I hadn't even taken in. And it comes
up again and again.
And again. And there are some plants, for example, there's one letter that's called cow parsley or hemlock, and as you may know, cow parsley is it is cow parsley in the park. I think it's not hemlock, but they look very similar, and I wanted to be sure. Often I've checked the names of things, and it's in the plant app said to me it could be cow parsley or it could be poison hemlock, and I thought, goodness me, what a difference, since was it Socrates who killed himself with a cup of hemlock? But I think that the business of things not being what they seem. There's also a chapter about the California pepper tree, which is even called that, but apparently is not really a pepper tree, and those aren't real peppercorns. And I think regarding my own life and the memories I have chosen to write about, for more than 3 decades, I was 36 when my father died, and I had really clung to the story that we were a very happy family. And there were certain episodes I remember thinking, well, we just put those aside. But I was convinced we were a very happy family. And then it turned out to be something completely different. And it's well, there's no family left now. So it's just relying on me. But I think that this idea of understanding, and I really, for my own life, I mean, I would take issue with the Kierkegaard quotation only in his absolute way of expressing it, that there is no problem that cannot be solved without walking, that cannot be solved by walking. And I would say there are plenty of problems which out there in the world, but personally in my life, walking has so far helped everything. And I know you told me about somebody who said, I can't remember who it was now, was it Flaubert, who said, or was it Nietzsche?
Nietzsche criticized Flaubert because Flaubert was a writer who was sitting, and sitting thoughts are not good thoughts. He should get up and walk.
Yeah. Yes, I think
you've said everything. Yeah. Well, I'll read the passage where you talk about being disillusioned by this notion that you had a perfect family. You say, I also know that I have spent over 30 years thinking we were a happy family. I cherished our moments of connection, of laughter, of intimacy, and told myself the rest wasn't real. It was only decades later, telling my family stories in therapy, that I began to understand what I had lived was not at all what it seemed. There was a lot of darkness I had insisted on infusing with sunlight. Indeed, in my denial of any darkness at all, I opened the door to delusion, anxiety, and self-doubt. What I've come to understand, and boy, it has taken me a long time, is that denial may offer temporary protection, but in the long run, it proves toxic. So Barbara, I'd love you to talk about denial.
With pleasure. I've spent a lifetime practicing it, so there is some part of I'm a staunch attendant of Al-Anon for reasons that I'm sure are obvious, but they say in Al-Anon that denial. A state of denial can give you the time and the space to become acclimated to whatever terrible thing you're needing to live through. But the problem is, if you stick with it for too long, you then get disconnected from reality. And I would say that is that's where I slipped up. And I think that this is a problem I have. I don't know whether I was naturally inclined to this, to denying reality, or whether it was the circumstances of my childhood. But certainly, this is something I have practiced too much in my life, and I think that I'm getting better at it. I mean, I have to say this because I can see Megan over there. There was a moment back in New York years ago when I decided that my sister was staying with us, and I decided we needed to have gratitude journals. So we bought these 3 gold notebooks, one for each of us, and we were supposed to all go away and write down things we were grateful for. And of course, I mean, I did it for, I don't know, a day and a half and put it down. But then I picked up the notebook some years later and saw that the one thing I had written down was grateful for my ability to deny reality. And I thought, wow. And I was in therapy at the time. She was hugely amused by that one.
I imagine there were good sessions after that. The connection between denial and magical thinking.
I mean, magical thinking has such a positive ring to it. I think I don't know how far it is from denial, but it has more magic in it. And I mean, for me, for example, when I started to exchange notes with this stranger in the park, I didn't want to know. I assumed it was a woman, rightly, but I didn't want to know who she was at first, because it felt to me like it was a communication from my sister. So and every morning, I mean, it completely changed the shape of the walk, and I would get so excited as it was about halfway point. I would get so excited as I reached the spot to get my new communication. And it's hard to really put myself back there exactly, because I think I thought it was coming from my sister, and that even though I must have known it wasn't, it gave me great comfort in those dark moments.
Maybe since we're on the subject of those notes, you could say a little bit more about the extraordinary communication you had over 1 year and how it came to pass that you actually discovered who it was.
Yes, I mean, there were so many moments in that. I had, in the first, I mean, I write about this as well, but about 6 months into my walking, so probably 5 or 6 months after my sister died, I went to a monastery up in Big Sur, a silent retreat, and somebody had said to me, I don't believe you've really accepted the fact that she's dead. You need to let go of her. She needs to go on her own journey. And I came back from that trip, and I went back to the trail the next morning, and I happened to, at a certain point coming down the trail, Bartleby suddenly sat down and could not be persuaded to go any further. So I looked around thinking, is there a coyote? Is there something around? And I looked up, and about 15 feet from us in the tree above the trail was this enormous great horned owl. And we stood there looking at one another for 10 minutes. And I said to Bartleby, do you think it's her? And he didn't respond, but we came on down the trail.
He preferred not to.
And the next day we came by the same tree, and there she was again. And so I was convinced, okay, this is my sister. She has now appeared many times, and she's switched trees. But I was convinced that she had appeared in the form of an owl. And one morning I came to the hiding place where we exchanged the notes, and I found a little muslin bag with some owl feathers in it, a crystal, and a piece of paper, and on it was a poem called The Great Horned Owl. And she had drawn a pencil sketch of an owl on the paper, and I just thought, I couldn't believe it. I just thought, this is really magical, and it was enormously comforting. And our exchange has had many moments like that, and it was. And then I will say, I mean, I don't want to ruin the suspense of the story, but then I came to the rock one morning, and there was a big wad of paper, and I thought, oh God, she's breaking up with me. And I was right. As a person, I feel like I never know when anything should end. So I just am always hanging on. And she knew when it was time to bring this to a close, and it was almost exactly a year. And then I had to make the decision, okay, because she did offer some way of communicating. And so I at that point, I was about 3/4 of the way through the book, and I thought, well, I have to meet up, because how is this going to end? How am I going to finish this? So we have, and it's a beautiful thing, and I can't believe that this whole experience has given me that as well.
You know, the book is in so many ways a story of transmutation and things coming back in a different form. And you relay in the book my confusion at the beginning, which you corrected me so kindly. The Kafka story. I'd like you to both tell the story and then focus on that one line that is so important.
I have a very close friendship with a man who taught me in high school, and we have Zoom calls once a month now, and we reconnected about 6 years ago. So he knew my sister very well, and was and has known this whole story as I've been writing it. And I told him about my exchange of letters with this mystery person, and he said to me, "Oh, well, you know the story about Kafka, don't you?" And of course I didn't. Kafka was in the park. This is maybe a year or a little under a year before he died, and he was in the park, and he met this little girl who had lost her doll, and she was inconsolable, and he tried to cheer her up. And the next day he came to the park, and she was there again, and he brought her a letter, and he said, "It's from the doll." And she was a little suspicious at first, but she opened it, and the doll said, "I'm sorry I left you. I had to go on an adventure." And so she recounted all of these adventures, and every day Kafka would come to the park and would bring another letter from the doll, and until it was just as he was getting more and more ill, right towards the end of his life, and he brought a new doll to the park, and he said, "Here she is, she's come back." And the little girl said, "But that's not the same doll." And he said, the letter said, "My travels have changed me." The little girl kissed her new doll and took it away, very happy. A little while later, Kafka died from the tuberculosis that had been plaguing him for some time. Many years later, the little girl, by then an adult, found a tiny letter inside the doll, signed by Kafka. "Everything you love will probably be lost, but in the end, love will return in a different form." Which I found this story incredible, because I mean, I just never thought of Kafka as somebody who would write letters from a doll. It's my failing.
I'm going to ask you to read another passage from the 47th letter. Which is called Bridge. And I'll precede it by how it resonated for me when I read it. I was reminded of a line by Chris Marker, the filmmaker, who said time heals all wounds? It would be better to say that time heals everything but wounds.
The pain of losing you rubs up constantly against my love for the people who are still here. Those 3 men, those boys. The friction between the two feels endless. I always loved you. Before I met P, before I gave birth to S and O. You were the precursor, the prototype. My model for love was shaped by loving you and being loved by you. Living without that first language, that origin, challenges me every single day. It is not that time is helpless, but it does not heal. I've come to believe that time can be magical when it comes to wounded feelings, old grudges, misunderstandings, bad blood. In those cases, minutes and hours, months and years can accrue into repair, but not with this, not with losing someone beloved. Time does not heal this kind of loss. One simply learns how to accommodate the aching space it leaves behind.
Another passage. I'm reading these because I want people to hear how Barbara has written this book and really transmuted a story of extraordinary pain into something that really isn't at all only that. I have spent so much of my life striving for a state of serenity, which I imagined was in reach and could be secured as an end goal. This is the black and white thinking I referred to in an earlier letter, but life has forced me to relent and give way to the grey. And it is only now, at this stage, after the experience of losing you, that I'm able to appreciate its beauty. It is not grey and drab. It is vibrant and silver, made up of black and white, but joyously mixed together. My next experiment is to imbue the ache of missing you with the light and joy of having known you at all. That passage really, I find, so tremendous. This book is the longest love letter one can imagine. I knew when I married Barbara that I came in second. And sadly, I've been promoted, a promotion I never wished for. And in a sense, one could say that Barbara never wished to write this book. But here we are. And in closing, Barbara will read the very last letter where she thanks Griffith Park for what Griffith Park gave her. Different saying this in New York than here. All of you can go and explore Griffith Park. What I want to do before Barbara thanks Griffith Park is thank Barbara for having supported me for years in my endeavors, in my work, in my lack of housework. It's funny, that always gets laughs of recognition, of really having helped me develop whatever it is that I developed, which I never would have been able to do without Barbara. And so I really want to thank her for all these years. But now it's your time. Now it's your moment. Now I love the light you bring and the luminescence that comes out of all of your being. Read that last letter.
It does feel special to read about Griffith Park here, because I know many of you find so much joy and inspiration and comfort there. So it does feel different to be reading this here than in Brooklyn. Thank you, Griffith Park. Dearest M, this is my last letter to you for now. I chose the number 59 because that is how many years you got to live. I will always think you were cheated, and I will also know that you were lucky to have all those years. What these past years have taught me is that one can hold many different things in one hand. At the same time, there is much darkness and there is more light. There is sadness and there is joy. It is all in the ampersand, which I have tattooed on my left hand. In living the discrepancy, it can be hard to hold the word and. I listen to the people in the rooms as they speak about their childhoods. The wise ones speak of the judgment and the intelligence, the abuse and the love, the sickness and the health, the wealth and the poverty. The real courage in life is to stretch out your arms and hold all of it, to grasp that there are no answers, there are only questions, and to keep asking the questions is the goal. Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." And that means remaining curious and open. It means being a person. The minute you close down out of grief or exhaustion or sadness, your life will shrink. I always fantasized that one day, maybe one day, I would be this way or that way. I would have reached a place where I could breathe easily, feel pride and a sense of accomplishment. But now I understand those moments are not intended to be the destination. They are fleeting instants to enjoy along the way. And that sense of chaos which seems to inhabit me always, I need to embrace that too. Remember how liberally I would use the word untidy to describe myself and my state of mind. I understand now that this is not to be lamented, but rather enjoyed, because to be alive is to feel untidy. As for you and me, the real you and me, our love story is not over. It has simply changed shape. I will keep talking to you for the rest of my life, because I cannot imagine doing otherwise. As Naomi said, people do not pass away. They die and then they stay. Whenever we parted, whether here or there, we always left each other notes. The sign-offs, as you remember, were always a string of letters, and it was the task of the recipient to figure out what the letters stood for. And then there's a long string of letters. The last word shall be mine. Ha! Bye for now. P.S. I need to thank Griffith Park for hosting me and your trail, and my tears and my joy and my delight, for offering such a richness of bounty that I will continue my pilgrimage walk for as long as I need to, which I suspect will be forever. Thank you. The epilogue is a poem that I'm sure is many of you are familiar with. It's a Mary Oliver poem called The Uses of Sorrow. In my sleep, I dreamt this poem. Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift.